So I need you to adopt a principle. So let's see if I can get you to adopt the principle. The principle, and then you're stuck. You understand what a principle is, right? Principle is once you adopt it, you're stuck with it. It applies to everything that happens in life. So if you have a principle, and the principle is that killing is wrong, good night, lights out, killing is wrong, no exceptions, well, then killing is wrong, right? Then you simply can't engage in that conduct. Okay. So, does everybody agree that some voluntary conduct can create a risk of harm to others?
Yes.
Everybody?
Yes.
And does everybody agree society has an interest in preventing that harm from coming about?
Yes.
Talk to me. Again, I got to have all yeses. Everybody's got to be on board. You're like my jury. I got to get 12 out of 12. I've got to get everyone to agree. How in heaven's name do you do that? You do it by natural law. You do it by reasoning law. Okay. So we agree where your voluntary conduct creates a risk of harm to others, there is a duty of care to either prevent or at the very least mitigate that harm from coming about. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So we're going to proceed on a couple of on a hypothetical here. Is it fair to say that my voluntary conduct in transporting hay creates a foreseeable risk of harm? Talk to me.
Yes.
Okay. So is the risk of harm for the transporter of the explosives the same as the risk of harm for the transport of the hay?
No.
Is it fair to say that before you get your license to practice law, you expect to enter law school? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And is it a necessary condition that you attend law school in New York? Is it a necessary condition that you attend law school if you're going to get a license to practice law?
Yes.
Yeah, you bet. So, what do I have to achieve? You've got to enter law school. Is it fair to say in order to get the license to practice law, you'll have to graduate law school? Everybody agree?
Yes.
Necessary condition. And what else do you have to do in order to get that license? You got to pass the New York State Bar exam. Everybody agree? So, why don't we start with how much at risk are you? In other words, we determine the duty of care you have by establishing the nature of the risk, right? Isn't that what we did? We determined the nature of the risk in transporting liquid explosives was greater than the risk in transporting hay, and thus we held that operated to a higher duty of care. Is that fair? So where the risk is greatest, your duty of care is greatest. Is that fair?
Yes.
Risk of harm of fail. Everybody agree the risk of harm is to fail? How about on the low side, it will be 83%, and on the high side, it will be about 86%. First time passage rate in New York State. How intimidating does that sound? Now, if you fail the bar the first time, and say you take it in July, you go back in February, would it surprise you if I were to say that approximately half of everyone who fails it the first time in July passes it in February? So if we start with, let's start with the low percentage with 83%. That would leave 17% with a fail rate, right? If half of that 17% passed it in February, would it be fair to say they had achieved their objective? And would it be fair also to say that's about 90%? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So your risk of harm here is 10%. Who plans to get thrown out of law school? Yeah. I came close. You know, I made it to academic probation after my first semester. But I mean, if I made it through, how are you not going to make it through? Anybody want to tell me what a representative dismissal rate is in law school? 3%. I want to double it because I want to be conservative. 3%. Did you guys realize that? Do you understand that law schools have a business to run? And how do you run a business by admitting a 3-year customer and throwing them out after the first year? How does that business work? Everybody get it? So I'm going to double that and say your risk of harm is 6%, which it's not. And we've all stipulated that you cannot, well, we actually haven't. Is it fair to say you will not go to law school without taking the LSAT and reporting a score? Is that fair to say? And would it be fair to say that the number of tests of people who take the tests, when compared to the number of folks who actually are admitted to law school, would give you the percent? Or we can expect this year that between 90 and 100,000 people will take the LSAT. So let's go with the low number. Let's go with 90,000. So if we did rough math and there were 90,000, now not everybody who takes the test applies, right? Because if you have a 133, why would you apply? You're not going to apply. But is it fair to say 90,000 people want to go to law school and there's room for 45,000? Is that fair to say? So you do the math. What's your risk of harm? 50%. So where's your greatest risk of harm? Is your greatest risk of harm in the bar exam? Is your greatest risk of harm in getting thrown out of law school? Okay, so it's on the LSAT. Didn't you all just stipulate and agree that where the risk of harm is greatest, the duty of care is greatest? And then, didn't you all stipulate and agree to that?
Yes.
How much work do you think you're going to do when you take the bar exam? In terms of duty of care, how nuts do you think you're going to be?
Very, very.
With a 10% risk of harm. So would it be fair to say the duty of care here is extreme? With respect to law school, how much work do you think you're going to do? You think you're going to treat it like college? You know what you're going to find in your first week of law school? You're going to find something that's really, it's something else. You're going to be excited. You know what you're going to be excited about? You're going to be excited about learning. How cool is that? You're just going to be on fire. And you say, well, wait a minute, why am I on fire? Why do I feel like all of a sudden life has meaning? What is with this? And if you stop and reflect on that and you get past the adrenaline, you'll say, oh, I'm excited to learn. Geeks. How much work are you going to put in? Do you plan on going to class stoned? So don't tell me you didn't do that in college. Do you plan on missing every third class? Do you plan on going into class and counting the inside of your teeth with your tongue, which is what I did in college? Which came out to the same number. Is that what you plan to do? And do you expect that the people in that class with you are underachievers? Would it be fair to say you will have a very significant duty of care that you'll apply to this? Is that fair to say? How do you think most people approach the LSAT? How do you think they do that? Well, the word vaudeville comes to my mind. They go do vaudeville. They'll refer to analytical reasoning as logic games. They'll look for tricks. Oh, tricks really get you through the first year of law school. That's how you succeed, right? You do tricks. You don't learn to reason. Why would we care about reasoning? Come reason with me sometime. So, do you see that it's likely a significant majority of people who are going into the LSAT are not holding themselves to anywhere close to these duty of cares? Does that make sense? So, what is your obligation when it comes to the LSAT with respect to duty of care? Doesn't it have to match, at least match, what you're going to do on the bar exam? So this is what I need you to do. This is what it's all about, right here. That the duty of care you have has to take into account the 50% fail rate. Now, would it be fair to say if you do not pass the bar exam, that's a death sentence for your goal? Is that fair to say? So if you fail to pass the bar exam, you're in the truck with the liquid explosives and it just ran into the truck with the hay. You are what? Dead. If you fail to graduate law school, you are what? Dead. And if you fail to get into law school with respect to your objective, you are what? Dead. You're dead. So, you're competing with people who don't have a clue. You don't know what you don't know. The poor bastards don't have a clue. I need you to have a clue. I need you to say, you're going to treat this at the very least with the energy and the conviction and the stamina and the willingness that you plan on tackling law school with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, you know, the ball's in your court. Does everybody understand that you now have to apply that principle of duty of care, risk of harm to yourself? And it's the LSAT.